The massive alien ships hung over Earth like dark clouds that never moved. Admiral Kang Woo-jin stood at the window of his hidden command center, deep inside a mountain in Korea. 3 months had passed since the Rex Empire arrived, and their ship still blocked out the sun over every major city on the planet. Woo-jin remembered that first day clearly. The Vrex fleet had appeared without warning, dropping out of space like falling stars. Within 6 hours, they had destroyed every satellite, space station, and orbital defense platform that humanity had built over the past 50 years. The attack was so fast and complete that most people on Earth didn't even know they were under attack until it was over. Now the alien ships just waited. They floated above Seoul, Tokyo, New York, London, and dozens of other cities. Each ship was the size of a small mountain, dark metal that seemed to swallow light. Strange symbols glowed along their sides, and weapon ports that could level entire districts pointed downward at the helpless cities below. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission from the Vrex," said Lieutenant Park So-min from her station. Her voice was steady, but Woo-jin could hear the fear underneath. They all felt it. Even the bravest soldiers were scared when facing something this powerful. "Put it on the main screen," Woo-jin ordered. The image that appeared made his stomach turn. The alien commander was tall and covered in dark scales that looked like armor. Its eyes were yellow and cold, and when it spoke, its voice sounded like metal grinding against stone. "People of Earth," the creature said in perfect English, though its mouth didn't move in a human way. "I am Thekmor the Conqueror, war leader of the Vrex Empire. You have now had 3 months to understand your situation. Your weapons cannot harm our ships. Your governments cannot protect you. Your military forces have been scattered like leaves in a storm." Woo-jin clenched his fists. It was true, and that made it hurt even more. Humanity's most advanced fighter jets couldn't even scratch the alien ships' hulls. Their missiles bounced off like raindrops. The few times they had tried to fight back, the Vrex had simply pointed one of their weapons at an empty military base and turned it into glass and dust. "We offer you the same choice we have offered 17 other worlds," Thekmor continued. "Surrender now, and your species will be allowed to live as servants of the Empire. You will work for us, serve us, and perhaps some of you will even survive to see your children grow up under Vrex rule." The alien's yellow eyes seemed to stare directly through the screen. "But if you choose to resist, we will burn every city on your world to ash. Every human will die, and your planet will become another empty rock in our territory. You have 7 days to give us your answer." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in silence. Woo-jin looked around at his staff. These were good people, soldiers who had sworn to protect their country and their world. But what could they do against an enemy that had conquered 17 other planets? "Sir?" Lieutenant Park asked quietly. "What are your orders?" Before Woo-jin could answer, his secure phone rang. The caller ID showed a name that made his heart race. Dr. Lee Hae-jin, Earth's top expert on alien life. But she was supposed to be dead, killed in the first attack on the Seoul Research Center. "Hae-jin?" he answered carefully. "Woo-jin, thank God you're alive," came her familiar voice. "Listen carefully, I'm not dead and I'm not where they think I am. Meet me at the old subway station under Myeongdong. Come alone and make sure you're not followed." The line went dead. Woo-jin stared at the phone for a moment, then looked up at his staff. "I have to go out for a few hours. Park, you have command, until I return." 2 hours later, Woo-jin found himself in an abandoned subway tunnel beneath Seoul. The city above was almost empty now. Most people stayed inside, afraid to walk under the shadow of the alien ships. The few who did venture out moved quickly and quietly, like mice hiding from cats. He found Hee-jin waiting for him in the old station, but she wasn't alone. With her was a man Woo-jin didn't recognize, tall and serious-looking, wearing the uniform of a captain in the Special Forces. "Woo-jin, meet Captain Park Do-hyun," Hee-jin said. "He's been organizing resistance cells across the country. Do-hyun, this is Admiral Kang, the one I told you about." Do-hyun stepped forward and shook Woo-jin's hand. His grip was firm and his eyes were hard. This was a man who had seen combat and survived. Admiral, we need to talk. All of us together. They sat on old benches in the empty station while Heejin explained what she had learned about their enemies. I've been studying every piece of data we can get about the Vrex, she said. They're not just conquerors, Woojin. They're systematic about it. They've done this exact same thing 17 times before. She pulled out a tablet and showed them charts and graphs. Look at this pattern. First, they arrive with overwhelming force and destroy the target planet's defenses. Then they wait exactly 3 months while making demonstrations of their power. Next comes the ultimatum. Always 7 days to surrender. Finally, the conquered species gives up because they see no other choice. Do-hyun leaned forward. What happens to the conquered species? They become slaves, Heejin said grimly. The Vrex use them for manual labor for about 50 years. After that, the cost of feeding and housing them becomes more than their work is worth, so... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need. Woojin felt sick. So they're just playing with us like cats with mice. Exactly, Heejin said. They could destroy us right now if they wanted to. But they prefer psychological warfare. It's more efficient. Why waste energy burning down cities when you can convince your enemies to give up without a fight? But people are talking about surrender, Woojin said. Some of the world leaders are saying we should accept their terms to save lives. Do-hyun made a sound of disgust. Save lives for what? 50 years of slavery followed by genocide? That's why I called you both here, Heejin said. There might be another option, but it's dangerous and it means trusting someone we've never met. She pulled out another device, this one looking like a military communication unit. Yesterday I received a message on an encrypted channel that shouldn't exist. The message came from someone claiming to be Dr. Yoon Tae-sik. Woojin frowned. I know that name. He was head of the Deep Space Research Division, but that whole program was shut down 10 years ago. Budget cuts. That's what everyone was told, Heejin said. But what if it wasn't really shut down? What if it just went underground? She activated the device and a man's voice came through the speakers. He sounded older, tired, but there was something in his voice that made them all listen carefully. If you're hearing this message, then the Vrex have arrived just as we predicted. They would 30 years ago. My name is Dr. Yoon Tae-sik and I'm speaking to you from a location that officially doesn't exist. For 3 decades, a small group of us have been preparing for this day. The voice paused, then continued. We knew that someday, Earth would face an enemy it couldn't defeat through traditional warfare. So we prepared for a different kind of war. Not a war to win back our planet, but a war to save our species. Woojin looked at the others. What is he talking about? The recording continued. If you're willing to take an enormous risk based on the word of a dead man, meet me at the coordinates I'm transmitting now. Come prepared to learn about humanity's greatest secret, and come quickly. We have less than 7 days to save 10 million lives. The message ended, leaving them in silence. Finally, Do-hyun spoke. It could be a trap. The Vrex might have captured this Yoon and be using him to draw out resistance leaders. Maybe, Heejin said. But what if it's real? What if there really is a way to save some of our people? Woojin stood up and walked to the edge of the platform, looking down the dark tunnel. Above them, millions of people were living in fear under the shadow of alien ships. In 4 days, their world leaders would probably announce humanity's surrender. And 50 years after that, every human being would be dead. We have to try, he said finally. Even if it's a 1 in a million chance, we have to try. Do-hyun nodded. I agree. My resistance cells have been fighting for 3 months, but we're just annoying them. We can't win a war against the Vrex. But maybe we can do something else. They spent the next hour making plans. Do-hyun would continue his resistance activities to keep the Vrex focused on him and his people. Heejin would keep studying the aliens, looking for any weakness they could exploit, and Woojin would investigate this mysterious Dr. Yoon and his secret project. As they prepared to leave, Heejin grabbed Woojin's arm. There's something else you should know. I've been monitoring Vrex communications and they're not taking us seriously at all. They call us the little primitives and joke about how easy this conquest is going to be. Good, Do-hyun said grimly. Let them underestimate us. It might be the only advantage we have. Wu Jin made his way back through the empty tunnels to his command center. The coordinates Dr. Yoon had provided were in the mountains north of the city, in an area that was supposed to be nothing but wilderness. But if there really was a secret facility there, it would explain why the Vrex hadn't detected it. Back at his base, he found his staff monitoring the latest news broadcasts. Every channel was showing the same thing: world leaders meeting in emergency sessions, discussing humanity's response to. Admiral Kang Woo-jin's helicopter flew low through the mountain valleys, staying close to the ground to avoid Vrex detection. 3 days remained until the surrender deadline, and the alien ships had begun conducting what they called final demonstrations over major cities. Just that morning, they had completely destroyed an abandoned military base in Japan, turning several square kilometers into a crater of melted rock and twisted metal. The coordinates Dr. Yoon had given them led to what looked like empty wilderness. But as they approached, Wu Jin noticed something strange. The trees in this area were too perfect, too evenly spaced, and there were no birds or animals, despite the forest appearing healthy and natural. "Set us down in that clearing," he told the pilot, pointing to a small open area between the trees. As soon as the helicopter landed, the forest around them changed. What had appeared to be solid rock and trees flickered like a broken television screen, revealing the entrance to a massive underground facility. Armed guards in uniforms Wu Jin didn't recognize emerged from hidden positions. "Admiral Kang?" asked the lead guard, a woman with the bearing of a career soldier. "I'm Major Song, Miran. Dr. Yoon is waiting for you inside." The entrance led to an elevator that descended much deeper than Wu Jin had expected. When the doors finally opened, he found himself in a command center that rivaled anything he had ever seen. Dozens of technicians worked at stations displaying star charts, technical specifications, and data streams he couldn't identify. But what caught his attention most were the massive viewing screens showing something impossible: ships. Hundreds of them, floating in the darkness of space. But these weren't Vrex vessels. They were human-built, sleek and elegant in a way that Earth's current technology couldn't produce. "Impressive, isn't it?" came a voice behind him. Wu Jin turned to see an elderly man in a white coat approaching. Despite his age, the man's eyes were sharp and alert. This had to be Dr. Yoon Tae-sik. "Dr. Yoon, I presume," Wu Jin said. "Those ships on the screen, are they real?" "Very real," Yoon replied. "And they're only a small part of what we've accomplished. Admiral, what I'm about to show you will change everything you think you know about humanity's situation. But first, I need you to understand something important. We are not trying to save Earth, we're trying to save humanity." Dr. Yoon led him through the facility, explaining as they walked. 35 years ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected the first confirmed alien signals. They weren't trying to communicate with us. They were military communications between ships of an expanding empire. We realized that contact with hostile aliens wasn't a question of if, but when. They entered a room filled with holographic displays showing star charts and technical blueprints. Captain Shin Mi-rae, a woman in her 40s wearing a Navy uniform, stood at the center of the room directing the displays. "Captain Shin is our chief engineer," Dr. Yoon explained. "She's been overseeing the construction projects. Mi-rae, please, show the Admiral what we've built." The holographic display zoomed out, showing the entire solar system. Red dots marked the positions of Vrex ships around Earth, but blue dots were scattered throughout the outer system, hidden among asteroids and small moons. "We've been building for 30 years, Captain Shin explained. "Hidden construction yards in the asteroid belt, secret mining operations on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, research stations disguised as deep space monitoring posts. All of it, funded through black budget programs that most governments didn't even know existed." The display focused on one area beyond Neptune's orbit. Wu Jin's breath caught in his throat. The blue dots there weren't scattered randomly. They were arranged in formation, and there were hundreds of them. 217 colony ships, Dr. Yoon said quietly, each one capable of carrying 50,000 people along with everything needed to start a new civilization. Genetic samples, cultural archives, manufacturing equipment, terraforming technology. Everything humanity needs to survive among the stars. Wujin stared at the display, trying to process what he was seeing. You built a fleet? An entire evacuation fleet? How did you keep this secret for 30 years? Very carefully, said a new voice. Wujin turned to see Dr. Lee Haijin entering the room, followed by Captain Park Do-hyun. And with help from people like us? Haijin, Do-hyun, how did you get here? We've been part of this project for years, Haijin explained. My research on alien life wasn't just academic curiosity. We've been studying the Vrex Empire since we first detected their signals. Do-hyun's resistance cells weren't just fighting the occupation. They were providing cover for evacuation operations. Do-hyun nodded grimly. Every time my people attacked a Vrex patrol, we weren't trying to hurt them. We were keeping them busy while transport ships moved essential personnel and equipment off-world. The Vrex think they're dealing with desperate terrorists. They have no idea we're conducting the largest evacuation in human history. Dr. Yoon activated another display, this one showing Earth itself. The selection process has been ongoing for 15 years, not based on wealth or political connections, but on genetic diversity, essential skills, and the ability to help rebuild civilization. Scientists, engineers, teachers, farmers, artists, soldiers, people who can ensure humanity's survival and growth. But only 10 million people? Wu Jin asked. There are 8 billion humans on Earth. The room fell silent. Captain Shin finally answered. We could only build so many ships with the resources available. 10 million people represent the best chance for humanity's long-term survival. It's not about saving everyone. It's about making sure someone survives. The Vrex have done this before, Haijin added. 17 times. Each time they conquered the entire species. Complete extinction within 50 years. But they've never faced an enemy that could escape their grasp entirely. Dr. Yoon led them to another section of the facility, where they could see the real scope of the operation. Loading bays filled with supplies, cryogenic storage units containing genetic samples from every species on Earth, and databanks holding humanity's entire accumulated knowledge. We call it Project Dark Harbor, Dr. Yoon explained. A safe harbor, in the darkness between stars. The evacuation began the moment the Vrex arrived. While they were busy destroying our orbital defenses, our ships were already carrying the first refugees to the outer system. General Choi Young-min approached them, a tall man with gray hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to making life-and-death decisions. Admiral Kang, I'm glad you're here. We need your help with the final phase. Which is what exactly? Wu Jin asked. Operation Prometheus, the general replied. While the world's governments prepare to surrender, we're going to steal 10 million people from under the Vrex's noses. But we need the remaining military forces to provide cover for the final evacuations. They showed him the plan on a massive display table. It was incredibly complex, involving coordinated movements across dozens of countries. Essential personnel were being quietly moved to remote locations where they could be picked up by hidden transport ships. The transports would carry them to the outer system where the colony fleet waited. The Vrex are monitoring all major population centers, Captain Shin explained. But they're not paying attention to remote areas. Why would they? As far as they know, humans don't have the technology to reach the outer planets. How long do you need? Wu Jin asked. 72 hours from the surrender announcement, General Choi replied. Once Earth's governments officially surrender, the Vrex will lower their guard. They'll expect us to be broken and compliant. That's when we complete the evacuation. Wu Jin studied the plan carefully. It was audacious, risky, and probably impossible. But it was also brilliant. What about the people who stay behind? The 7 billion who don't make it onto the ships? Dr. Yoon's expression grew sad. They'll face whatever fate awaits under Vrex rule. We can't save everyone, Admiral, but we can ensure that humanity survives somewhere in the galaxy. And after the evacuation, what happens to Earth? That depends on how long we can maintain the deception, Haijin said. The Vrex expect to find 8 billion humans when they land. They're going to find a lot fewer than that. Eventually, they'll realize what we've done. Do-hyun smiled grimly. By then, it won't matter. The colony fleet will be gone, scattered, to a dozen different star systems. Even if the Vrex chase after us, they can't follow everyone. Fleet Commander Oh Jin Wook, a man Wu Jin had never met before, stepped forward. Admiral, I'll be commanding the evacuation fleet once we leave the solar system. Our quantum drives will allow us to reach potentially habitable systems within 20 years. We're not just running away. We're ensuring humanity has a future. Wu Jin looked around at these people, all of them working together on the most ambitious project in human history. For 30 years they had planned and built and prepared for this moment, and now, with less than 3 days remaining, they were asking him to help them pull off the greatest escape in history. "What do you need from me?" he asked. "Your people," General Choi replied. "The remaining military forces need to maintain the illusion that Earth is preparing for surrender, while actually covering the final evacuation. Air traffic control needs to look normal. Communications need to appear routine. The Virex must..." President Kim Sung-ho sat in the emergency bunker beneath Seoul, staring at the speech he was about to give to the world. In 2 days, humanity would officially surrender to the Virex Empire. But the words on the paper in front of him were carefully chosen lies, each sentence designed to convince their alien conquerors that Earth's leaders were broken and desperate. "Are you ready, Mr. President?" asked his aide, Dr. Song Yun-young. She was young for such an important position, but Kim had chosen her precisely because the Vrex would underestimate her. What they didn't know was that she was one of the most brilliant strategic minds humanity had ever produced, and every piece of information she fed to the Vrex intelligence services was calculated to reinforce their assumptions about human weakness. "As ready as I can be to lie to 8 billion people," Kim replied. He was 73 years old and had spent his entire political career fighting for his country's independence. Now he was about to announce its surrender. The fact that it was all theater didn't make it any easier. The cameras started rolling, and Kim began his performance. His voice shook with what appeared to be exhaustion and despair. His hands trembled as he held his prepared statement. To anyone watching, he looked like a broken old man facing the end of everything he had ever fought for. "My fellow humans," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "For 3 months we have lived under the shadow of the Vrex fleet. We have seen demonstrations of their power that prove beyond any doubt that resistance is impossible. Our weapons cannot harm their ships. Our defenses cannot protect our cities. Our military forces have been reduced to scattered groups hiding in the mountains." Every word was true, but Kim was counting on the Vrex, not understanding what it meant. They had studied 17 other conquered species, and everyone had followed the same pattern of despair leading to surrender. They expected humans to react the same way. "Therefore, it is with the heaviest of hearts that I must announce our decision," Kim continued. "In 2 days, Earth's governments will formally surrender to the Vrex Empire. We will accept their terms and hope that they will show mercy to our people." The speech continued for 10 more minutes, each word carefully scripted to sound like the desperate plea of a defeated leader. When it ended, Kim turned off the cameras and looked at Dr. Song. "How did I do?" he asked. "Perfect," she replied. "The Vrex monitoring stations will intercept that broadcast within minutes. Their analysis programs will confirm what they already believe, that human leaders are weak and broken." Meanwhile, across the city, Captain Park Do-hyun was leading what appeared to be a desperate assault on a Vrex patrol station. His resistance fighters moved through the abandoned subway tunnels, carrying weapons that looked primitive compared to alien technology. But this wasn't really an attack. It was performance art. Do-hyun had been coordinating with the Vrex for weeks, feeding them intelligence about human resistance activities. Of course, the Vrex didn't know they were being fed anything. They thought their advanced sensors and captured communications were giving them a complete picture of human resistance capabilities. The attack began at exactly 14:30, just as Do-hyun had told his Vrex contact it would. His fighters emerged from 3 tunnel entrances, firing assault rifles and throwing grenades at the alien checkpoint. The weapons made a lot of noise and created impressive explosions, but they barely scratched the Vrex defensive barriers. The aliens responded exactly as expected. They deployed their energy weapons and started cutting down the human attackers. Du-hyun made sure his people fought bravely. The Vreks respected courage even in their enemies, but also made sure they fought stupidly. Frontal assaults against superior firepower, poor coordination between groups, weapons that were impressive by human standards but laughably primitive by Vreks measures. Within 20 minutes the attack was over. Half of Do-hyun's fighters were dead, and the rest were retreating back into the tunnels. To the Vreks, it looked like another failed human assault. Brave but doomed, just like all the others they had faced. What the Vreks didn't see was the real purpose of the attack. While they were focused on the gun battle at the checkpoint, 3 transport ships had lifted, off from hidden launch sites outside the city. The ships were carrying the last group of evacuees from the Seoul area, 2,000 scientists, engineers, and their families who were now on their way to the colony fleet. Du-hyun himself had been wounded in the attack, a shallow cut across his arm that looked much worse than it was. As Vreks medics treated him, they wanted their prisoners alive for interrogation. He played his role perfectly. "Please," he gasped, grabbing the alien medic's arm. "Don't hurt the civilians. We'll stop fighting if you promise not to hurt the children." The Vreks medic made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your species always breaks eventually," it said in its grinding voice. "The strong races last a few more months. The weak ones surrender immediately. Your kind seems to be somewhere in the middle." "We just want our families to be safe," Do-hyun pleaded. "They will be," the medic replied, "as long as they work hard and cause no trouble. The Empire has use for strong backs and clever hands." As they spoke, Do-hyun was memorizing every detail of the Vreks medical equipment, their treatment procedures, and their casual attitude toward human suffering. This information would be valuable to the colony fleet, helping them understand their enemies better for any future encounters. High above the city, in the Vreks command ship, War Leader Thekmor reviewed the day's reports with satisfaction. The human resistance was collapsing exactly as predicted. Their attacks were becoming more desperate and less coordinated. Their leaders were preparing for surrender. Their population was showing all the signs of a broken species ready to accept defeat. "The humans are performing exactly as expected," reported his intelligence officer, Sub-Commander Veklas. "Their resistance groups are poorly equipped and badly coordinated. Their military leadership appears to have lost all strategic capability. Their civilian government is actively seeking surrender terms." "And their population?" Thekmor asked. "Standard pre-surrender behavior. Mass migration from urban centers to rural areas, presumably seeking safety. Hoarding of food and supplies. Religious gatherings increasing as they seek comfort in primitive beliefs. All normal patterns for a species facing conquest." Thekmor was pleased. He had conquered 6 worlds personally and had studied the conquest records of the other 11. Humans were following the template perfectly. In 2 days, they would officially surrender. Within a month, the population would be pacified and organized into work units. Within a year, Earth would be a productive member of the Vreks Empire. What Thekmor didn't understand was that the mass migration his sensors detected wasn't refugees fleeing to the countryside. It was the carefully coordinated movement of essential personnel to pickup points where they could be collected by transport ships. The hoarding of supplies wasn't preparation for siege conditions. It was the systematic removal of critical equipment and materials that would be needed by the colony fleet. And the religious gatherings weren't desperate people seeking comfort in their final days. They were coordination meetings where local leaders received final instructions for the evacuation. Dr. Lee Hyejin had been crucial in designing this deception. Her understanding of Vreks psychology, gained from months of studying their communications and behavior patterns, allowed her to predict exactly how they would interpret human actions. "They see what they expect to see," she explained to Admiral Kang during one of their secret meetings. "For 300 years, they've been conquering primitive worlds. They have a template for how conquest works, and they assume every species will follow that template." "But what about their sensors?" Woo-jin asked. "Surely they can detect the transport ships." "Their sensors are designed to detect military threats," Hyejin replied. "Large ships with weapons and armor. Our transports are small, lightly built, and use stealth technology they've never encountered. To their sensors, they look like civilian aircraft or small cargo vessels. The deception was working on multiple levels. While President Kim gave speeches about humanity's desperate situation, his staff was secretly coordinating with world leaders to ensure the evacuation continued smoothly. While Captain Do-hyun's fighters staged dramatic but futile attacks, the real resistance was quietly moving people and equipment off-world. While Earth's populations appeared to be in panic, the most essential members of human civilization were calmly boarding ships that would carry them to safety. Commander Oh Jin-wook, leading the colony fleet from his flagship in the outer system, received regular updates on the evacuation's progress. The massive ships were fully loaded now, with all 10 million evacuees aboard and all essential supplies secured. The fleet was ready to leave at a moment's notice. "Status report," he requested, from his navigation officer. "All ships report ready for departure," came the reply. "Quantum drives are charged and course calculations are complete. We can begin our jump sequence immediately upon receiving the final authorization." Oh looked at the tactical display showing Earth and the Vrex fleet. Soon the Vrex would discover that their greatest prize had slipped through their fingers. But by then, the colony fleet would be beyond their reach. The morning of Earth's surrender dawned gray and cloudy over Seoul. President Kim Sung-ho stood before the cameras for what would be his final broadcast as leader of a free Earth. His hands shook as he held the surrender document, but this time the trembling was real. Despite knowing the truth about Project Dark Harbor, the weight of what he was about to announce still crushed his heart. "People of Earth," he began, his voice cracking with genuine emotion. "Today marks the end of human independence. I have signed the formal surrender documents, placing our world and our people under the authority of the Vrex Empire. We have no choice but to submit to their rule and hope for their mercy." Across the planet, similar scenes played out as world leaders made their own surrender announcements. The Vrex monitoring stations intercepted every broadcast, analyzing the emotional distress in the humans' voices and confirming what their psychology experts had predicted. Another species had broken under the weight of inevitable conquest. War leader Thekmore watched the surrender broadcasts from his command ship with deep satisfaction. He had waited the customary 3 months, demonstrated his overwhelming power given the ultimatum, and now collected his prize. In 18 previous conquests, this pattern had never failed. "Begin deployment of the occupation forces," he ordered his fleet commanders. "Standard protocol: secure all major population centers, identify leadership structures, and begin organizing work units. I want this world productive within 30 days. The first Vrex landing ships descended through Earth's atmosphere like falling meteors. They touched down in every major city simultaneously: New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing, Mumbai, Sao Paulo. Thousands of Vrex soldiers emerged from the ships, their weapons powered and their scanners active, ready to take control of humanity's homeworld. But Captain Park Do-hyun was waiting for them in Seoul with a surprise that would make them question everything they thought they knew about human surrender. As the Vrex troops marched through the empty streets toward the government district, Do-hyun triggered the first phase of Operation Revelation. What the aliens expected to find was a city of 10 million frightened humans, waiting to be processed into work units. Instead, they found elaborate holographic projections. The shopping districts were filled with realistic images of crowds going about their daily business. The residential areas showed families in windows and children playing in parks. Traffic moved through the streets in normal patterns. But when the Vrex soldiers tried to interact with these people, their hands passed through empty air. "Command, this is Landing Group 7, reported the confused Vrex squad leader. "We're detecting massive population concentrations on sensors, but when we attempt physical contact with the humans, they appear to be not real." Similar reports flooded in from Vrex forces across the globe. Every major city showed the same pattern, sensor readings indicating millions of humans, but physical investigation revealing sophisticated illusions. Sub-Commander Veklas, monitoring the reports from orbit, felt the first stirrings of alarm. "War leader, we're receiving contradictory data from all landing sites. Our sensors detect Human populations consistent with pre-conquest estimates, but our ground forces report finding holographic projections instead of actual people. Thekmore's yellow eyes narrowed. In 18 conquests, he had never encountered anything like this. Are you telling me that the humans somehow created planet-wide illusions? That's impossible. Their technology is centuries behind ours. I'm reporting what our forces are telling me, Veklas replied carefully. Perhaps there's some kind of sensor interference, or maybe the humans have hidden their populations in underground bunkers. Then find them, Thekmore snarled. Scan every tunnel, every basement, every cave on this planet. 8 billion humans don't just disappear. But the deeper the Vrex dug, the more confused they became. The underground tunnel systems were real, but they were mostly empty. The bunkers existed, but they contained supplies and equipment rather than people. The cave network showed signs of recent habitation, but the inhabitants were gone. Dr. Li Hyejin, disguised as a captured scientist and brought before the Vrex intelligence officers, played her part perfectly. She appeared terrified and eager to cooperate, answering their questions with just enough truth to seem credible while feeding them exactly the misinformation they needed to hear. Please don't hurt me, she begged as the Vrex interrogator loomed over her. I'll tell you whatever you want to know. Where are your people? The interrogator demanded. Our sensors detect massive populations, but our soldiers find only empty cities. They're hiding, Hyejin said, her voice shaking with apparent fear. When your ships first arrived, people panicked. Millions fled to the countryside, to remote areas where they thought they'd be safe. The government set up temporary camps in wilderness areas. Show us these camps, the interrogator ordered. Hyejin provided coordinates that led the Vrex search teams to carefully prepared sites that looked like recently abandoned refugee camps. They found evidence of large numbers of people, cooking fires, temporary shelters, waste disposal areas, but no actual humans. They must have moved on when they saw your ships approaching, Hyejin explained when the interrogator confronted her with the empty camps. People are terrified. They keep running, trying to find somewhere to hide. The explanation seemed reasonable to the Vrex, who had dealt with fleeing populations on other conquered worlds. But something felt wrong to Subcommander Veklas as he reviewed the data from across the planet. War leader, he reported to Thekmore. The resource consumption patterns don't match population estimates. Power usage is running at less than 10% of expected levels. Food distribution networks show activity patterns consistent with a population of less than 1 billion humans, not 8 billion. Thekmore studied the data with growing unease. Either the humans had somehow hidden 7 billion people so effectively that Vrex sensors couldn't find them, or something else entirely was happening. And in all his experience conquering worlds, he had never encountered a species clever enough to fool Vrex technology on such a massive scale. The answer came from Strategic Commander Zektos, who had been analyzing communication intercepts from the months leading up to the surrender. What he discovered changed everything. War leader, Zektos reported, his voice tight with something that might have been fear. I've been reviewing archived human communications from the past 6 months. There are references to something called Project Dark Harbor and mentions of evacuation quotas and transport schedules. What are you suggesting? Thekmore asked, though part of him already knew the answer. I'm suggesting that we may have been deceived, War Leader. The humans may have evacuated their essential population before we ever landed. The implications hit Thekmore like a physical blow. If the humans had somehow managed to move billions of people off-world, then his great conquest was nothing but an empty shell. Worse, it would mean that a species he had dismissed as primitive had outwitted the entire Vrex Empire. That's impossible, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. They don't have the ships, they don't have the technology. Our sensors would have detected any large-scale movement of vessels. Unless their technology is more advanced than we assumed, Zektos replied quietly. Or unless they've been planning this for much longer than we thought possible. The final confirmation came when Admiral Kang Woo-jin activated Operation Revelation's second phase. Every remaining government facility on Earth simultaneously began, broadcasting the same message on all frequencies. But this wasn't another surrender plea. This was a message from Commander O Jin Wook, transmitted from beyond the solar system. O's image appeared on every screen on Earth and was immediately intercepted by Vrex monitoring stations. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, surrounded by star charts showing locations far beyond Earth's solar system. "Greetings, War Leader Thekmor," O said calmly. "By the time you receive this message, the human colony fleet will be safely beyond your reach. I am Commander O Jin Wook, speaking to you from a location approximately 12 billion kilometers from Earth." Thekmor stared at the transmission in disbelief. Behind the human commander, he could see other humans working at advanced control stations. The technology displayed was clearly beyond anything the Vrex had believed humans possessed. "For the past 30 years, O continued, humanity has been preparing for your arrival. We knew you were coming long before you entered our system. We studied your empire, your tactics, your psychology, and we prepared accordingly." The message continued with devastating calm. "You expected to find 8 billion humans waiting to become your slaves. Instead, you have conquered an empty world inhabited by holograms and maintained by a few thousand volunteers. The real prize, 10 million of humanity's best and brightest, is already scattered across a dozen star systems, establishing new colonies where your empire will never find them." O's expression grew harder. "You came here expecting to add Earth to your collection of conquered worlds. Instead, you have learned something that should terrify your empire. Some species refuse to stay conquered. Humanity lives, War Leader Thekmor, and we will remember." The transmission ended, leaving the Vrex command ship in stunned silence. For Essie, 120 years had passed since the Great Exodus, and the descendants of Earth's refugees had built something the galaxy had never seen before. Admiral Lee Jae-won stood on the bridge of the battleship New Seoul, the flagship of humanity's return fleet, as it dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Jae-won was the great-grandson of Dr. Lee Hae-jin, one of the heroes of the evacuation. The stories of that desperate escape had been passed down through 4 generations of humans who had grown up among the stars. Now, those children of exile were coming home. "Sir, we're detecting the Vrex occupation fleet," reported Captain Kim Minju from her sensor station. 43 ships in orbital positions around Earth. Configuration matches century-old Vrex designs. Jae-won smiled grimly. His great-grandmother had been right about the Vrex. They were creatures of habit who rarely changed their tactics or updated their technology. In the 120 years since conquering Earth, they had grown comfortable and complacent. "Any response to our arrival?" he asked. "Not yet, sir. They appear to be conducting active scans, but they don't seem to recognize our ship designs." That wasn't surprising. The new Terra fleet represented technology that had evolved through 5 generations of desperate innovation. When you're building a civilization from scratch with limited resources, you learn to make every component count. Human ships were now smaller, faster, and more efficient than anything the galaxy had seen. "Open a channel to the Vrex commander," Jae-won ordered. "It's time to announce our return." The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of a Vrex command ship. The alien sitting in the command chair was much older than the Vrex who had conquered Earth. His scales dulled with age. This would be current Overlord Hekmar, grandson of the infamous Thekmor who had been tricked by humanity's greatest deception. "Unknown vessel," Hekmar's voice ground out through the translation system. "You are entering Vrex territory without authorization. Identify yourself immediately or be destroyed." Jae-won stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back. He wore the uniform of the reformed Earth government in exile, dark blue with silver trim and the insignia of humanity's scattered worlds. "Current Overlord Hekmar," he said calmly. "I am Admiral Lee Jae-won of the Human Colonial Navy. We are here to reclaim our homeworld." The effect on the Vrex bridge was immediate. Several aliens turned to stare at their commander, while others began frantically working at their control stations. Hekmar himself leaned forward in his chair, his yellow eyes wide with something that might have been fear. "Impossible," he hissed. "The human refugees were scattered beyond our reach over a century ago. Your species exists only in small colonies, with primitive technology." You're half right, J1 replied. We were scattered, but primitive. Current overlord. You've been occupying an empty world for 120 years while we've been building a civilization that spans 47 star systems. Would you like a demonstration of just how primitive we are? Without waiting for an answer, J1 nodded to Captain Kim. The new Sol's weapon systems activated, but instead of firing at the wreck ships, they targeted a small asteroid in the outer system. A beam of brilliant white energy reached out across millions of kilometers and simply erased the asteroid from existence. Our technology has advanced considerably since you last encountered us, J1 said, as the Vrex stared at their sensors, in disbelief. That was a Class 7 quantum disruptor. We have 50 ships in this system, each carrying weapons that would have been considered impossible when you conquered Earth. Captain Park Min-seo, commanding the stealth destroyer Incheon, Dream, watched from her position hidden among the asteroids as the Virex fleet began to panic. Her ship and 20 others had been in the system for weeks, studying Rex defenses and confirming what their intelligence reports had suggested. The occupiers had grown lazy and overconfident. All stealth units report ready, she transmitted, on the encrypted command channel. The Virex defensive grid has more holes than a fishing net. They're not expecting any real resistance. Jaewon received the report and felt a surge of satisfaction. His great-grandmother would have appreciated the irony. The Vrex had spent so much effort preventing another escape that they had never prepared for a return. On Earth's surface, General Kim Tae-ho monitored the confrontation from a hidden base in what had once been the Korean mountains. He was the descendant of President Kim Seung-ho, and like his ancestor, he had volunteered for the most dangerous mission. For the past 5 years, he had been secretly organizing the human population that remained on Earth. The Vrex occupation had not been kind to humanity's homeworld. The aliens had strip-mined much of the planet's resources and used the remaining human population as forced labor. But they had also made a critical mistake. They had underestimated human adaptability and the power of hope. "Sir," reported his aide Lieutenant Oda Young, "resistance cells across 6 continents report ready for simultaneous uprising. We have approximately 2 million people ready to act on your signal. And our Vrex sympathizers? In position. Turns out that a century of occupation breeds resentment even among the conquerors. The younger generation of Vrex don't understand why they're stuck guarding an empty world instead of expanding the empire." Tae-ho nodded. That had been another key element of the liberation plan. Dr. Yoon Ji-hee, head of the new Terran Science Consortium, had spent decades studying Vrex society and had identified the fractures that could be exploited. The occupation of Earth had become a dead-end assignment for Vrex military officers, and many were ready for change. Back in space, current Overlord Heckmar was trying to maintain his authority, even as his fleet commanders reported impossible readings from their sensors. "War Leader Zok Thane," he barked at his tactical officer. "What is the combat capability of the human fleet?" "Current Overlord," came the nervous reply. "Our sensors indicate technological capabilities far beyond our current estimates. Energy output suggests weapons and defenses equivalent to or superior to our own. That's impossible. These are refugees from a primitive world." "Current Overlord," interrupted another officer. "We're detecting additional human vessels entering the system. Current count is 57 ships and rising." Admiral Jaewon watched as more ships from the human colonial navy dropped out of hyperspace around the Sol system. The destroyer Busan Lightning appeared off Earth's moon. The cruiser Daegu Vengeance took position near Mars. The battleship Gwangju Freedom emerged from behind Jupiter, its weapons already charged and ready. But the ship that caused the most reaction among the Vrex was the massive vessel that appeared directly between Earth and its moon. The dreadnought New Terra was twice the size of any ship in the Vrex fleet, and its hull gleamed with the advanced alloys that human engineers had perfected during their exile. "Current Overlord Heckmar," came a new voice over the communication channel. President Choi Da-bin appeared on screen, her uniform marking her as the leader of the reformed Earth government in exile. "I am President Choi Da-bin, duly elected representative of the 47 worlds of the Human Colonial Alliance. I am here to formally demand the immediate withdrawal of all Vrex forces from the Sol system." Heckmar's scales were now visibly darker, a sign of extreme stress in Vrex physiology. President Choi, surely we can negotiate some arrangement. The Empire has invested considerable resources in this system over the past century. The same resources you stole from our world, President Choi replied coldly. The same population you enslaved for over a century. Current Overlord, let me be very clear. You have 48 hours to begin evacuation of all Vrex personnel from Earth and the Sol system. After that, we will consider your continued presence an act of war. You cannot be serious. The Empire has conquered 17 worlds. We do not negotiate with inferior species. Inferior? Admiral Jaewon stepped back into view. Current Overlord, would you like to see just how inferior we are? He gave a subtle signal, and across the system, the human fleet demonstrated their technological superiority. Energy shields that could deflect asteroid impacts flickered to life around every human ship. Quantum drives that allowed instantaneous position changes moved vessels from one orbit to another in the blink of an eye. Sensor arrays that could detect individual life forms on planetary surfaces began cataloging every Vrex installation in the system. But the most impressive demonstration came from Dr. Song Hyun-woo, the fleet's chief science officer. His ship, the research vessel New Sejong, deployed what appeared to be a small probe toward one of the Vrex vessels. Current Overlord, Dr. Song said pleasantly. This probe contains a complete technical analysis of your flagship's design, including detailed schematics of your quantum core, weapon systems, and life support infrastructure. We scanned and analyzed your entire fleet in the first 30 seconds after our arrival. The probe attached itself to the Vrex flagship's hull and immediately began projecting holographic displays showing the internal structure of the ship in perfect detail. Every corridor, every system, every crew member was mapped and identified. We know where you are, how many of you there are, and exactly what you're capable of, President Choi said. We also know that your technology hasn't advanced significantly in the past century, while ours has evolved.